Hello, and welcome to today's Best of 3 Historic Deck Tech and Gameplay video. Today's video is on Rogue Tribal. Now, before we get into talking about the nuts and bolts of this, two little minor things. One, this is pretty largely a adaptation of a Rogue deck in Standard. Of course, with some things changed, but it is, at its core, taken largely from Standard, so if you want to, say, take a deck from Standard and bring it into Historic, this might be a good one for you to do. The second, on a more technical note, this is the first video where I'm going to try and record these and edit these and do all this stuff in 1080p, so pardon any sort of weird growing pains that might otherwise exist, as I am still getting around this, and hopefully it will work. Again, if I miss something, please, that's what the comments are for, please tell me so I can attempt to fix them in subsequent videos. Now, with all that preamble out of the way, we shall get to the deck in question. And with that, or on that point, how I was talking earlier about it is largely based on a lot of the good stuff that comes from the Standard version of the deck. We run 4 Soaring Thought-Thief, blue and a black, 1/3 human rogue, flash and flying. As long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, all rogues get an additional power. And whenever 1 or more rogues attack, each opponent mills 2 cards. This is one of our lords, not only lords and enablers. Lords, because of the 8 in their bin, and your rogues get 1 attack. It's also able to, if nothing else, self-enable its own Lord ability by triggering the bottom line of text. The flash and flying is nice to keep these things kind of open, seeing how this deck likes to play a mix of tempo and aggro. We also have 3 Drown in the Lochs, good counterspell or creature removal spell, equal to where you can get rid of something whose cost is equal to the amount of cards in an opponent's yard. Oftentimes can be basically a 2-mana OG counterspell. The other two of the other lords that come in from Historic, I'm running 3 Metallic Mimics. Just a 2-mana 2/1 shapeshifter. In this case, it's a rogue lord. But its lord effect comes in the form of giving all other rogues that enter the battlefield a +1/+1 counter, which normally is a kind of weird, while still is a lord, it's a little weird and not always what you want out of your lord, but because of the other card, Oona's Blackguard, that came in Jumpstart, we actually kind of enjoy the +1/+1 counter little synergy here. Oona's Blackguard is 1 and a black for a 1/1 flying fairy rogue. With each other rogue creature enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it, basically doing the same thing Metallic Mimic does. And kind of another, where the +1/+1 counter synergy comes in is the whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. With the Blackguard, the Thought-Thief, and the Mimic, as well as the other rogues we'll talk about, it's very, very good at attacking your opponent's resources. In the case of the Blackguard, directly in their hand, and in the case of your Thoughtseize and the Thieves Guild Enforcers, that we'll get to in a second, it also will add sort of a clock to your opponent's library, giving you a kind of alternate win con of like milling at your opponent. Also, we have the 4 Thieves Guild Enforcers, kind of adds to the Soaring Thought-Thief game plan, where it's a 1-mana 1/1 human rogue flash. When it or another rogue enters the battlefield under our control, opponent mills 2 cards. Again, adds to Thought-Thief and adds to the mill win con if we need to. And whenever an opponent, or as long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their yard, similar to the Thought-Thief, Thieves Guild Enforcer gets +2/+1 Death Touch, helps to keep a 1-drop like the Enforcer, relevant late game. We also run 4 Merfolk Windrobber as a good 1-mana rogue. Has flying, so has a degree of evasion. When it deals combat damage to a player, player mills a card, which again adds to the Thieves Guild Enforcer kind of lore effect and win con, as well as the Thought-Thief mill win con, as well as if we need to sacrifice to draw a card in the case of a removal spell or a board wipe, which happen a lot. It's nice that you can kind of cash it in later on, ideally. Run 4 Thoughtseizes because we also, again, with the Oona's Blackguard Metallic Mimic little package, we enjoy also attacking our opponent's resources in hand. Not to mention Thoughtseize is just a very, very good card, good for information. We don't mind the loss of life as much, so that's a minor cost, seeing how it does everything a tempo deck like ours wants to do. I run 3 Brazen Borrowers, just a very, very good card. Inherently a 2-for-1 in being able to bounce an opponent's thing. For 2 mana, R being a 3 mana flash flying rogue. Granted, the inability to block anything but flying creatures is a little bit of a downside, but it's, again, much like the Thoughtseize life loss, might as well not even be one. We run 3 Zareth San, another good rogue payoff, which by itself is 3 blue and a black for a 4/4 legendary Merfolk Rogue with flash. We'll go over the second ability. Whenever Zareth San deals combat damage to a player, you may put a permanent card from that player's graveyard under your onto the battlefield under your control. Again, with the attacking our opponent's hand with the Thoughtseizes and your Oona's Blackguard style cards, or even just milling things with your Soaring Thought-Thieves or your Thieves Guild Enforcers or the Windrobbers. Not to mention anything you might kill with, say, Drown the Lochs. Odds are they'll have something you want. And the fact that it can be a target permanent means that at bare minimum, provided they have a graveyard, you can, if nothing else, get a land. But what makes this even spicier is the Rogue Jutsu, I call it, effect for 2 a blue and a black. You can return an unblocked attacking rogue you control to its owner's hand and put Zareth San, Trickster, onto the battlefield from your hand, tapped and attacking. So you can kind of, if one of your rogues manages to get through, which is fairly easy, when a lot of our cards like the Thought-Thief and the Blackguard and the Windrobber have flying, or even, if they have flying, it's much easier to get in under the radar. And being able to Rogue Jutsu in and take an opponent's really important thing that you've milled, potentially ahead of curve. It's nothing like, taking an opponent's Ugin on turn 4. It's an amazing, again, kind of aggressive, very tempo kind of getting plan. For some our final bit of support cards, we run 2 Into Story, which is 5 and 2 blue for draw 4 cards at instant speed. The reason why we run this is that it costs 3 less to cast, and an opponent has 7 or more cards in their graveyard. Again, for all of the aforementioned reasons, it's very easy to get 7 cards in an opponent's graveyard, and paying basically 4 to draw 4 is nice at instant speed. You could argue this might want to be other things, or if you don't have this and you have other card draw spells, don't be afraid to replace this. I just feel it's on theme and still does what you want it to do. And as you've seen in other decks, one of my more favorite pet cards now is Alrund's Epiphany. It's 5 and 2 blue to make 2 1/1 birds with flying and take an extra turn after this one, and you exile this card. It's oftentimes you can, if you have an extra 1 turn or 2 turns, you can basically close out the game. And again, being able to foretell it to kind of keep it safe and hidden. It's very rarely is it a card your opponent's expecting. But if you don't have this, you can always say add more creature spells or removal. I just think this card is absolute gas. Land-based, pretty simple. We run 4 Faceless Havens, simply because it's in this case, a rogue, which is always very nice. It's nice to be able to sit on a creature if nothing else. We run 4 Watery Graves just because shocklands are good color fixing. We run a split of snow-covered islands and swamps, leaning heavier on swamps because more of our early game cards lean black. And we run 1 Castle Vantress in order to curate draws. This can be a Castle Locthwain if you don't have a Vantress, but even though we don't mind losing the life, doesn't mean we can just, continually shock ourselves into oblivion. Sideboard, for the most part, fairly easy to understand. 2 Essence Scatters, counters for big creatures, negates counters for big non-creatures, always nice. Cunning Nightbonder against your more controlled decks that might run some counter spells, also is a rogue. And, the spells costing 1 less part isn't super necessary, or isn't always the greatest, simply because a lot of ours don't have a whole lot of cost to begin with, but we're more for the flash spells can't be countered part of it, which can be more relevant than you want. I run 2 copies of Lazav simply because it's nice to potentially play down in a real hand-hatey or super control-y matchups, and to be able to say bank another Zareth San if you need to, or turn them into Thieves Guild Enforcers or Thought-Thieves to stack the Lord effects is always nice. If you don't have Lazav, you can just, again, add additional copies of something else here. We run 2 Crippling Fears as a board wipe that won't affect, or air quote, won't affect our board, but should, by all accounts, affect our opponents. Of course, except for the odd case where we're in a mirror matchup, or they're also playing 1 or 2 rogues. But that's such a niche case, it's worth it almost always to have it. I'm running 3 Vraska's Contempt, simply because it's a little bit of life gain if we need it, and it can get rid of really problematic planeswalkers or creatures like your Croxes, which is somewhat relevant, or being able to exile really annoying cards in your Rakdos Arcanist matchups are always very nice. I run 2 Enter the God Eternals, nice way to basically get rid of a creature, heal some life, and mill your opponent for 4 cards, which is something, again, our deck enjoys doing. And amassing 4 to also leave behind a body. It does a lot of things on 1 card. I would actually think this is kind of required. Again, but if you don't have it, don't be afraid to run something weird like a Murderous Rider or some more generic kind of removal if you don't have it. But I'm loving this card also. Now, with that all out of the way, that will be the deck tech portion of the video. Again, if you leave me at the deck tech, have a great day. Like the video if you like it. Sub if you like me. If you have any sort of questions about what you might run in place of X or Y, that's what the comments are. And also, again, if there's some sort of weird technical difficulty that I don't notice during the recording and editing, that's what comments are for also. But with that out of the way, we'll move on to game number 1. Okay, game number 1 with Rogue Tribal. Honestly, very good hand. 3 lands, 4 spells, all pretty low to the ground. Can't ask for much more. So we'll go ahead and keep this. Ooh, they got that 7 McKinnon sleeve. Very pretty. Mountain from our opponent. Go ahead and Watery Grave. Untapped for a Merfolk Windrobber. Next turn, we'll just play the Oona's Blackguard and try and start developing a board. We'll see what our opponent's trying to do here. Second mountain. Steamkin's a little iffy. But I think we'll actually continue with the plan of the Oona's Blackguard. Ooh, you're some sort of Boros deck. Or maybe some mono red splashing white for some Showdown of the Skulls type of thing. I would be surprised if the Oona's Blackguard lives a turn. Ooh. Go ahead and let that through. I don't know what our opponent's running, but I am a fan. Oh, that's a little unfortunate, but what are you going to do? We'll go ahead and just bounce the Seamkin. Probably just Thoughtseize, see what they have. Ooh, some sort of storm decky kind of thing. We'll go ahead and get rid of the Steamkin. Granted, that was a very roundabout way to remove a thing. I was right! I was just bullshit. Alright, I'll take it. This is going to be a fair amount of damage from our opponent. We're not, like, over the moon about that. What did we want from our opponent's board? We might honestly just take a showdown of the skulls. Go ahead and attack. And then, again, the unblocked Rogue Jutsu thing ability. We'll return the Windrobber. Go ahead and take their showdown of the skull. Thank you. Get some more card draw out of the situation. We're probably going to bring in some simple removal here. There's kind of a lot of dead draws there, to be entirely frank. Cast a spell, 1/1 counter on creature you control. Unless we just die. Okay, so we'll play the Haven. We'll get rid of one is a Thermo Alchemist. Probably gonna get pinged in response, and I guess if they just have a... Actually, we'll go ahead and get rid of... So that wasn't what I picked the wrong one. Okay, if we die, we know why. Let it be known that I had forgotten which one came first. That was the first one I played. I meant to play the second one, so I could play the Petty Theft. That's a red spell. I guess an Alchemist? And now I guess we just hope and pray that we don't die. We're just gonna go ahead and try to make a really big board. Try and kill our opponent here. We will animate. Oh, hang on. That entered the. Did that enter the battlefield this turn? Did it? I don't think it did. Oh, thank God. Okay, we just barely managed to get that one out of the way, but it was a good showing for the deck. So we're going to bring in probably just some Vraskas for some more life gain, and the same thing for Into the God Eternals. We don't want to Thoughtseize against a burn and more aggressive deck. We want to cut those since we're awfully fond of not dying. We'll probably... one cut here. Might be into the story. We'll go ahead and try that. Game game 2 of match 1. That is a garbage hand with like nothing to do. I'm gonna mulligan this. Okay, we'll take that. And we'll just chuck back a swamp. It's not great, but I can actually do things with this hand as opposed to the last one. Put a swamp back in the bottom. Let's see, Sacred Foundry from our opponent. We play an island. We'll go ahead and just play an Oona's Blackguard on 2 and just hope they don't have it. It might very well not live to see see tomorrow, as it were. Probably a shock or something. Nope, but he's looking for it. A couple mountains are good. Those are dead draws. A ping from our opponent. Hey, that is honestly pretty good. We'll just play another Oona's Blackguard here, honestly. We are almost to the point where we kind of have the lock-in. Not the next turn, but the turn after, we'll have the mana for an Enter the God Eternals. So hopefully we'll be able to... Guess what's getting bounced this turn? We want to make sure we meet the 2 blue requirement, so we'll play the Snow-Covered Island. We're just going to bounce it before any weird shenanigans can happen with Bergie. As a person who's trying to have this Storm deck, or is brewing this Storm deck, I know all too well how crazy that card is. And again, with the Oona's Blackguard little discard thing, synergy, whatever you want to call it, you can also attack their hand size, which is very important. Especially against an aggro deck like this. It's nice to attack your opponent's hand in more controlling matchups, but it's amazing in aggro matchups that would otherwise have difficulties doing it on their own. He doesn't shock the... You gotta have, like, the nut draw out. Sometimes you just draw another one, I suppose. Okay. I like the cut of your jib, but you gotta do something here, otherwise... I'm gonna, like, turn the corner here real soon. Again, we're just gonna enter the God Eternals, targeting Bergie, and we're gonna make our opponent mill. Develop a board. Just come in. Of course, it's a little less useful. Doing pretty good, honestly. We're not out of the woods entirely, but I'm feeling good. Booyah! Game number 1. Well played, opponent. Oh, also, for... just in case you're wondering why I'm gold now, simple season reset, that's all. Game number 2. Also, pardon about the... I may have forgotten to give the outro to game 2. Because I have a 1 and 2 drop, we're going to keep this, but I'm not in love with this hand. But it'll suffice. Mountain from our opponent. We'll play a Swamp and save the Thieves Guild Enforcer. Shock in our opponent's hand? Or something to that effect. Another mountain. Another Steamkin? Ho ho! That is a shock to our face and not to our creatures. Ah! Go ahead and play the Thieves Guild now. Getting rid of a shock and a Lava Runner's good. We'll go ahead and play the Blackguard, even though it might very well just eat a Skewer next turn. Oh, that's a great one. Oh my god. That could have sucked. This appears to be a more traditional red deck wins kind of thing. Again, we might bring in just the Vraskas and the Enter the God Eternals as a way to deal with creatures and help stabilize our life total. We'll go ahead and just play the Thought-Thief now, so we can take advantage of the attack trigger. Alright, I'll take it. I would argue you would probably be able to win that. Oh, no. I hear that going on. Okay, there we go. Again, get rid of the Thoughtseizes. We don't want to damage our life any more than we need to. And we'll get rid of probably one Metallic Mimic. Again, we're just going to try and play it pretty much exactly like the last game, honestly. Although this appears to be a much more traditional red deck ones. Our opponent last game appeared to be a different kind of build of a mono red one that splashes a little bit. Honestly, this is pretty good. The fact that the Alrund's Epiphany, besides, say, giving us another turn and another draw to potentially close out the game, if nothing else, is buy a turn, look for an answer, and if you brick, you've at least made, you know, some birds. Let's see what our opponent does here. We're waiting. I would prefer not to get BM'd. I'm not gonna lie, opponent. That first game was good. I'd like not to have to record another game too. Go ahead and keep this. Please don't be gone. Your deck can totally beat me. Just gotta catch early. Aww. Don't be like this. I mean, I've been there too. In the off chance that somebody happened to... Oh, nope, never mind. Disregard my shit talking. I know what I said earlier in the sideboarding about not wanting to lose too much life, but Shocklands is just a requirement. We'll go ahead and play the Thought-Thief on 2. The Mimic is nice, but not required. It might be a good turn 3 play. A Pyromancer from our opponent. Oldie but a goodie. And now, if nothing else, we can turn 3 play a Mimic and then a Merfolk Windrobber. Get rid of... Ooh, a Steamkin's nice to get rid of. A Risk Fact. God, I love that card. I still think that card's kind of good. Ah, shit. I mean, we're not, dead. That just sucks. I do like our earlier plans. It'll just be Metallic Mimic, naming Rogue, followed by a Windrobber. Milling lands isn't really gonna stop our opponent here. Now I guess we're just looking for lands here. I'm actually gonna take this block against the Pyromancer. We enjoy the +1/+1 counters, but we're at a risky point right now where I prefer not to die. You know, kind of like that. Please, I just need more lands, game. Give me a land. Please, I need a land. Does our opponent have something else? Need more cards in the graveyard. Hell. I mean, that's a land. I'll take it. I'm not over the moon about it, but it'll work. We'll go ahead and pocket the Epiphany here. Honestly, getting rid of a lightning bolt is very, very good. Come on, give me a land. I will take this Windrobber trade. Windrobber into the Steamkin. If he plays a spell to bring it out of range, we're just gonna sack it and look for a card. That is not what we needed here, game. I actually have to get rid of this. I would like to just 2-0 this if at all possible, because we really need this land. I am gonna give you those cards, dude. Okay, you would have been nice a little bit earlier, but that's a sequencing thing on my end. But this does give it Death Touch, so I can trade with the Steamkin, hopefully. Might have been a mistake to do that. Yeah, that could have been a very, very bad move. Come on, give me a land, game. Please give me a land. Huh. Me milling my opponent is kind of a little bit of anti-synergy if they're running a G2 Lavamancer. Or Runner. That's another risk factor. Honestly, take the cards, dude. That's not a land game. Fuck. Okay, how do I... We don't attack. I'm going to try and be responsible and play to my outs. We'll send the Thieves Guild blocking the Steamkin. We'll use the Borrower to bounce the Chain Whirler. Okay, that sends me to from 2. If he has any burn spell that goes in my face, we just die. I think that might literally be us dead. Gets through, bounces, can't block. Yeah. Good game from our opponent. I think we had the right play. We just happened to not draw the thing we need. That's one of those, like... If we would have drawn a land, that might have actually been us turning the corner. And sometimes that's, you know... You just don't draw what you need. I'm okay with a variance loss. All comes down to game 3, though. But I'm happy. If nothing else, if we lose this game, the deck has at least had a good showing and has done kind of what you hoped for it to do. Don't know what our opponent would change drastically in game 3 of match 2. Fair enough. Of course we'll play first. Not a amazing hand, but again, 3 lands, 4 spells. We won't look a gift horse in the mouth and all that. Probably just play a Mimic on turn 2. Hope desperately to develop a board. Oh, that's actually kind of good. Maybe we can get something big. And if nothing else, even just like an electrostatic field or something to block is like more relevant than one would imagine. Play at least 1 Windrobber next turn, maybe 2 if we draw another island. We'll go ahead, Blackguard, and then a Merfolk Windrunner. And we will honestly attack. If he trades into the Mimic, we're fine, since that's a Steamkin dead. Does he take the trade? That's about... I mean, of course there are arguments... Oh, thank God. Arguments to be made to taking it and not taking it, but I probably would have also not taken the trade. We milled 2 Light Up Stages, which is great for the amount of gas they have. The Chain Whirler sucks, but, like, it's not the worst thing on the planet. I'm actually gonna not take that block. Do you have anything I want to take? I could... He literally doesn't have any permanents for me to play, so I'm actually just gonna play a Windrobber. And just sit there and use the Blackguard triggers to eat away their hand. And then maybe get something the following turn. But if we draw a regular land, I'm not opposed to flashing in the Zareth San to just be a big blocker. Again, we're hoping to, like, really mess with his resources. If something happens to live another turn, or if I happen to get another chance next turn, I would actually not be, or would not hate the idea of just taking an electrostatic field to be a big blocker. Getting rid of shock is actually pretty big. It's a Pyromancer. Skewer from our opponent would kind of suck. Maybe he has a Wizard's Lightning. Let it be known that maybe I should have been taking that trade, and that might have been a bad play. I fully acknowledge it. I'm also awful. So, Wizard's Lightning, which is real bad. Again, I'm not opposed to just playing this thing as a blocker. We might have another fucking Steam King. Unless we draw like a Vraska's though, I think. Okay, that might actually be the game. Okay, if I attack with 1... I'm going to attack with just the Windrobber. Because if he shocks it out, then we'll just play a Thoughtseize. And yeah, we just actually lose. Which sucks. I might have needed to take a trade there earlier, but I was just hoping we'd draw a Vraska or Enter the God Eternals. But yeah, the game's over. That's fine. But I'm happy with the way the 2 games went, and I'm not... I don't mind showing losses. Again, if it shows what the deck is trying to do. And I believe we have at least accomplished that. As usual, I shall end off the stream with a little look at the deck list. It's a pretty fun deck, honestly, and if you're looking to migrate from standard to historic, this is honestly not a bad list to do it with, or some version of a Dimir Rogue's deck if you would like. But anywho, thank you all for watching. Again, like the video if you liked it, sub if you like me, and if you have questions, or any sort of polite constructive criticism, that's what the comments are for. With that, stay safe. I'm pulling for you. We're all in this together.